Last week, Mohammed Rodwan, who stabbed PC Stuart Outten 6 times in the head with a machete, was convicted of wounding with intent. Why? Why not attempted murder? Because if ever there was a clear case of it, PC Outten lying bleeding in the road with 6 great holes in his skull was it. Yet Rodwan, who's got previous form with machetes, got only 16 years and probably weren't so close to that. When he was arrested, the convicted rapist said of PC Outten, "My life's worth more than his," and that's what's got to change. A criminal's belief that a Bobby's life is worthless and can be taken at will. We expect policemen to take risks we're too scared to, which is why violent thugs need to know that if you try to kill them, it's a whole life sentence. No ifs, no buts. There were more than 10,000 violent attacks on coppers last year. So if we want more police like Stuart looking out for us, they have to know we value their lives and the risks they take to keep us safe.
Carole, that was a horrifying case, but I don't think that we should extrapolate law on the basis of one case and change sentencing policy and principle. I think that sentencing has to always be balanced with rehabilitation. If you're arguing that anybody who attacks a police officer should get a mandatory life sentence, where does rehabilitation...
I said attempts to kill.
Attempted murder. Where does rehabilitation come in, which is part of the point of prison?
I think to know what we're talking about here, we have to have a look. This is the video, and I have to issue a warning. This video shows some of the violence during the attack and in the immediate aftermath.
I need an ambulance now. I've been stabbed in my shoulder. 999!
Now, if that wasn't attempted murder, I don't know what it is. That was 6 slashes to his head and 2 to his arms.
I just want to read something, because having seen that, I think it's appropriate to read the statement of the officer himself, PC Outten, after the conviction, because it's really an example of something consummate professionalism coming from this police officer. He said he had no hatred for the attacker, and then he said, which I found amazing, he said, he did what he did, he's now paying the price for it. I don't feel the attack was personal. He was attacking an officer in uniform, and I responded as such. I mean, the professionalism of this man is amazing. And it raises another point, though, to your point, which is, should there be harsher offences for attacking a man in uniform, a woman in uniform?
Yeah,
I think perhaps there should be. Perhaps there should be.
There are.
And why wasn't this attempted murder?
Attempted murder. In fact, why don't we hear from the police officer himself?
I took 6 machete strikes to the head and 2 to the arm.
And I can see some of the scars now.
Yeah, I've got visible scars all over my head, visible scar on my right hand, visible scar on my right forearm, and there'll be ones that will never go away.
Did you always think you would come through it, or were you frightened at any point?
There was a point where I'm on all fours, blood's coming out my head like a tap, and I'm kind of thinking to myself, I'm in a little bit of trouble here. To the point where I'm thinking to myself, I was focusing on my breathing, just thinking if I slow my breathing down, I can slow my heart rate, slow the blood loss, stop myself from passing out, because if I pass out, I can't guarantee that I can keep control of myself and keep my heart beating, so to speak.
It's what's known as an aggravating factor. Yeah. So lower charges, attempted murder or wounding with intent, but lower charges, because it needs to be said, paramedics unbelievably get attacked as well, sometimes for their drugs. So there is something already before the court. I would argue clearly it's not working. We heard the figure that you quoted, the high level of attacks, and you're absolutely right. So we need to revisit that. It was only within the last 2 years it was introduced. I think it needs to be freshened up. But just coming back to your initial point, there is no doubt that police officer would have died had he not had his taser. Exactly. He would have died. So how that can not be attempted murder, because we would now be mourning the death of a very brave young man.
And also, sorry, let me just say that, you know, the thing that he said is, my life is worth more than his, and that's what we've got to change. Because when you attack an officer of the law, when you try to kill, or if you do kill him, you're attacking the fundamental basis of our society. You're attacking law and order. And I believe that while all attempted murders are serious, I think the attempted murder of a policeman warrants a life sentence.
I'm struggling to get my head around the idea that it wasn't attempted murder. The criteria for murder are you need to attempt to cause grievous bodily harm, and it needs to then lead to death. That's the category for murder. If you slash somebody in the head with a machete several times, you're attempting to cause grievous bodily harm. It's that simple.
Carole, can I bring something else? I think we're all agreed that if you attack a police officer, anybody in a uniform who's trying to serve society, keep the peace, look after our citizens, they should have a higher sentence. But we do have the largest prison population in Europe. There are 80,000 men, 4,000 women in prison. This government is spending £2.5 billion on building new prisons. We've also got to address that issue as well as saying... Carole, we've got to address the issue. We do have overcrowded prisons. We have prison officers who are signing off for stress because the prisons are so overcrowded. Rehabilitation has got to be at a premium, given the current crisis in prisons.
So, you know, see, if policemen are protected, that, you know, I'm amazed Stuart Outten has not left the force. Many would have walked away, but many still will. If they're not sufficiently protected, and you say the prisons are full, they're going to be an awful lot more full if there's a breakdown of law and order, and there will be, because there won't be enough cops joining the force to keep law and order.
20,000 are joining. Not just to watch facial.
We don't know if they're going to be on the streets or doing facial recognition. I just think, you know, criminals have to be disabused of the fact that a police officer's life is worthless.
Okay. And he is spending 16 years in jail for that offence.
He will not spend 16 years.
Two-thirds.
He won't. He won't, because even though the government has
get
scrapped the halfway scheme, he could still serve just 2/3.
It took me a while to get over my initial fury at seeing what the hell just happened to that man just there. But remembering who we are as a society and just basic morality, if you put me in jail for 1 year and I come out, I'm not the same person. I'm either worse or I'm better. If that person is still having the same attitude he has now of my life is worth more than his, etc., he should stay in prison for as long as he has that attitude. However, we recently saw Jack Merritt literally die for the principle that rehabilitation is a fundamental part of our justice system. And if we have a system that makes sure people who go into prisons are properly rehabilitated, then by a certain time, they should be allowed to leave. If we know for certain, well, at least as certain we can be.
It didn't work for Rodwin. He's attacked people with machetes before. He's also a convicted rapist. The man's not going to be rehabilitated. He should be in prison forever.
I question why he's out now.
Before the rehabilitation question...
Why was he on the streets?
It was a long time ago.
Isn't the deeper question why this wasn't a charge and conviction for attempted murder?
You know why? You know why they do it? The cops put two charges. They put one of wounding and one of attempted murder, because with attempted murder you have to prove intent. If you can't prove that, then at least you get the wounding charge in. And wounding charge can be up to like 16, 17 years. So they do it as a double measure. But in this case, it's a clear-cut case of
there should have been attempted murder, and that kind of does away with the rehabilitation argument, because the question is, what charge should he have faced and been convicted for? And I don't think anyone on this table disputes that attempted murder is life.
Just to clarify, Rodwin was charged and acquitted of attempted murder. But let's now hear from the Justice Secretary, Robert Buckland, who speaks to your point about, Carole, about how people aren't confident that people are being put away for the correct length of time. And what he says is, time and again, victims tell me they feel let down by a system that can see violent and sexual offenders back on the streets after serving just half their sentence. So we will end the automatic halfway release for these offenders, ensuring punishment truly fits the crime and restores the public's faith in the justice system.
Just want to point out, between 2018-19, 10,399 attacks on coppers that were injured in every single one of them.
Yeah, well, OK, we've got to move on, I'm afraid, from that debate. You're watching The Pledge on Sky News. Up next, the importance of remembering the liberation of Auschwitz 75 years on.